from 1.6 to under 900 in the span of 3.5 months. And then today, those accounts are over $4 million. That's the weird thing about this whole thing is like, having 1 million compared to 5 million, I don't live any different. I do the same. I eat at the same places. I have a 2011 Jeep Grand Cherokee that I've had for 6 years.
You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their current portfolio allocation. Now to your hosts, Clark Sheffield and Jace Mattinson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is episode 208. Clark, what's going on in your world? How you doing?
Dude, doing pretty good. What's going on with you?
Not a lot, man. Just getting all into the Halloween festivities and fall festivities. We got great football going on and all sorts of things at this time of year. What about you?
Except our team lost last week, huh?
Yeah, that was a tough game to watch, but I'm actually going to the game this week. I'm pretty excited. Should be a fun one.
Oh, nice. Nice, yeah. BYU Baylor we're talking about.
Yep.
We got a listener question from Michael this week, and we just wanted to read it and talk about that. He says, "My name's Michael. I'm an emergency room nurse with about $45,000 in student debt. I was wondering if you could ask a question. The question is, when you are young, is it smart to pay off student loans or better to invest in the market, businesses or 401k, etc., rather than paying the loans off in full? Is having capital, I assume he means is having capital invested, worth more than having no debt?" So what's your take on that, Jace?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think obviously it's going to be different for everyone, but I'm of the school of thought that I like to have a little bit more cash pad than probably most in regards to being able to pay off debt and having, very little cash, just because I think just in this day and age, especially when we talked about inflation not too long ago, I mean, you just never know what kind of expenses could pop up. But I think some of this depends on whether or not you're already a homeowner, whether or not, you've got some other established fixed bills that you need to pay or not. And, to some degree, I still think it's important to invest in your 401k, even if you've got student loan debt, if you've got a match, or even if you don't. That's just my personal preference. I think those monies compounded over time or on finance, on the calculator and on paper, you're going to end up with a better return than probably that interest rate is on your student loan. Now, having said that though, what tends to happen, and this is why people who typically follow like a Dave Ramsey school of thought or they want to get out of debt, is those loans end up sticking around for everywhere. And because they are so low and you end up not really attacking them and probably end up paying more interest than you need to. So I think there's a healthy balance in trying to figure out, how to pay that off, how to save for a house, when to get in the market. To some degree, that's a fixed payment. On the other hand, buying, assets are most likely going to go up in value over your lifetime. So it's good to get in early. What about you?
Yeah, and I think I would say, Michael, to this answer in terms of what we've heard from our millionaires, I think both Jace and I have been surprised that millionaires have not necessarily rushed to pay off their homes. I would say the majority of whom we've talked to, of course, there's people both ways, but more than 50% of the millionaires have kept their mortgage on their home if they've had a low rate. However, I would say we've never heard of people keeping student loans longer. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jace. Maybe there's been a couple, but very rarely, if any, heard of people keeping their student loans longer, even if there was a low rate on those. So I think just in interviewing the 300 millionaires or so that we've talked to, that's one thing I've noticed in relation to that question. Is that correct, Jace?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, just in general, millionaires that we've talked to, and I think most, especially non-business owners for the most part, are more debt averse. But at the same time, like you mentioned, I think we've been surprised how many have had a home loan longer than maybe they could. And some even have the cash in the bank to pay it off. And then also some that might have gotten a car loan at one time or another that probably had the cash to pay for that as well. It's been surprising, more than I would have thought. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. But I'd say now all the millionaires are pretty much debt free, except that they have real estate or a mortgage on their primary home. So Nobody's sitting around with, very few, I think, that we've talked to are sitting around with any student loans or credit card debt or car payments or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely not credit card debt and definitely not keeping that student loan around for 20 plus years like you would maybe a mortgage. So interesting question, interesting thought. Thanks again, Michael, for sending that in. If you'd like to submit a question, we've got SpeakPipe on our website, millionairesunveiled.com. You can voice it in or happy to respond to emails just like Michael sent one in. And we'll pose that to a few millionaires that we're interviewing here in the near future too, just to get their takes on it. And we can get a separate, direct answer from some of them as well. This week we have Al. He's a part-time financial advisor, a drummer, and an outdoorsman. His net worth is $5 million, half of which has been invested in one stock, one you might have heard, called Tesla. He initially put $200,000 into it, and it's obviously ballooned over the last few years. He has over $3.5 million in retirement accounts, majority of that which is Tesla, $500K in brokerage accounts, which is all individual stocks, $200K in a rental property, $200K in his primary residence, and then some other ancillary accounts like HSA and cash. It's interesting. His net worth at the beginning of the pandemic, or before the pandemic started, was 1.6, and he had dropped down to 900,000 in just a few months. So we talked to him about that drop and what he was thinking for himself and for some of his clients that he manages money for, and then how he was able to springboard that to over $5 million now. Last week's episode, we had Brandon. He's a window washer. He had a net worth of $230,000 without his business. Some of his in retirement accounts, some of his been in real estate, and the rest is in cash. Interesting point on a follow-up with Brandon. He wrote into us, and his net worth is now significantly over $500,000 since we've interviewed him. So it's been quite crazy talking to some of these. We've got a little bit of delay in some of these interviews when they get posted, and some of these millionaires have doubled their net worth in such a short amount of time just because the market's been so crazy. We appreciate you tuning into the podcast week after week. If you enjoy the show, we appreciate you leaving a 5-star review on either iTunes or Stitcher or anywhere you listen to the show. Helps us continue to grow the show and reach new millionaire interviewees. Really appreciate y'all that do. Also in the show notes, we have a survey. If you would please fill that out, it won't take more than a couple minutes. It's going to help us kind of collect some information just of our listener base and hope that we'll be able to cater some of the things at our show better and understand our audience a little bit better. So once again, that's in the show notes of today's show. And without any further delay, let's get into the episode with Al.
Al, you want to just give us a little about your background and what you're up to now?
Sure. I'm a financial advisor. That's what I do for a living at this point. I've been doing that for 25 years. I also host a podcast, and I play drums in a band called Spy Baby. Outdoor enthusiasts. I was kind of telling you before that the financial advisor piece of my life now it's kind of like part-time. So I manage a clientele of about 100 clients, and it's been that way for about 8 years. It hasn't really shrank or grown much in that time. So it's pretty much on autopilot at this point.
Awesome. And what is your net worth today?
So net worth today, it changes day by day. Today, I think we estimated about around $5 million today.
Awesome. And how is that broken up?
All right. Well, I have it written down here because I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. So in a taxable brokerage account, I have $500,000, and that's split between everything's in individual stocks. I'm almost ashamed to say. In a SEP IRA, I have $3.35 million. And that's, an accumulation of 401k assets over the years that were rolled over, plus contributions and that kind of thing. 260 grand in a Roth IRA. And I have one rental property that used to be a former primary residence, about 200 grand in equity there. Primary residence, about 200 grand in equity. And then, small stuff like HSA, 27,000, savings account, about 12,000. That pretty much sums it up. It's a really like an uncomplicated net worth. I don't have businesses or, extensive rental properties or anything like that.
And debt is just on the rental property and primary residence?
It is. That's correct.
Okay. Interesting. So obviously that retirement, that 3.6, I mean, that's pretty substantial. So let's get into that. I know you got a pretty unique story around that and how that has grown.
Yes. In the last year, which has been the most interesting year in every way, I'm sure for many of us, It started, January 1st. January 1st, I remember looking at my statement, and this is all of my investments, including non-retirement and retirement together. I had $1.6 million. And by the end of March, of course, after the pandemic broke out and the market hit its, low, which, was like, an elevator ride down real fast, I went from 1.6 to just under 900,000. And I was losing my mind. I've been in this industry for 25 years, almost 25 years, and I'd never seen it go down that fast. And you know the feeling when you get into those markets, you have no idea how low it's going to go. And in my business, not only are you in a panic for your own assets, you're in a panic for your clients' assets. Now the clients are upset. They're calling. Your income obviously goes down because you're getting paid on the assets that you manage. It's just you're getting hit on all ends when there's a down market like that. So from 1.6 to under 900 in the span of 3.5 months. And then today, those accounts are over $4 million. So I basically almost got cut in half and then more than quadrupled in the last, less than a year. So it's been a roller coaster ride.
So backing up, you're worth maybe $2 million at the beginning of last year, and then pandemic hits, you go down to 1.3, 1.4.
Yeah, that's right. In 3 months,
and now up to 5.
Yeah, I know it doesn't.
So you're just a really good financial advisor, is what you're telling us.
Yeah, it's all skill. I have to say it's my financial advisor's prowess. It's been the luckiest year. The weirdest thing, because it felt like the most unlucky year and turned into, from a financial standpoint, the luckiest year of my life. And we didn't mention that, about 2.5 million of the assets that I have are in Tesla stock.
Holy cow. No way.
Yeah.
Wow. So
yeah.
2.5 million, you just riding the wave of Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And many people are, right? Tesla's been on a tear this year. So maybe for our listeners, back up, when did you decide to purchase Tesla, and what's been your journey as an investor in Tesla, and why did you choose Tesla?
Well, I bought Tesla back in 2017. Of course, watched a few videos of Elon Musk. The thing that sold me on Tesla, and I heard this, it was kind of a piece of advice that I got from Peter Lynch from Fidelity. I remember reading one of his books back in the day, and he mentions if you're going to invest in a company, start, if you want to start kind of sifting through companies, just look in your community, look to see what companies are doing well. If you walk into a Starbucks and it's packed every single day, well, maybe, Starbucks might be a good investment. At least you start there. So I remember going to supermarkets here in Charlotte and seeing Teslas all over the place. And I'd always, I have to look at them, and I'd, literally get out of my car, I'd press my hands up against their window, look inside the car to see the big monitor and all that. And a handful of times I've met the owners of the cars, coming out of the supermarket, and every single one of them were just raving fans. And I had one guy, didn't know the guy. I was just, again, looking in his window, and he saw me coming out. He's like, yeah, you like the car? He's like, I love it. It's amazing. And he's like, if I wasn't going to pick up my wife right now, I'd take you for a ride. I'm like, this is a stranger. And I don't know, something clicked. I was like, I've watched Elon Musk. I've listened to what he had to say. Now I hear what the customers are saying about the products. Again, this is all hindsight's 2020. I didn't know it was going to do what it was going to do. I just had some confidence. So I bought 1,000 shares. It was, at that point, I'd spent, a little over 200 grand to get in, for the 1,000 shares. This is pre-split. And it went up, so it went up from $200 a share to 500, almost 600. And I remember it was right before an earnings call where I panicked a little bit. Earnings call was coming, it could have went either way, it could have really dipped hard. And I sold half the shares. I sold 500 shares. I had a friend of mine from New York that is a financial advisor, and he was kind of in my ear a little bit. He's like, yeah, you should, take some profit, get out, you have 1,000 shares. Man, wish I would have held those shares, It worked out either way, but
How much would though have been worth today? I mean, how much are you looking at? I know it's not easy to look at, but just curious though. I mean, you still have a lot in there, right? You've rode the wave, but roughly what were you looking at?
It literally would have been another $2 million. Another $2 million on top of what I have. It's crazy. I mean, because
you're like the guy who lost his Bitcoin, man.
Yeah.
Like the 200 million in Bitcoin that's in the dump in the UK that he can't find.
Exactly,
dude, that one's worse, right? 200 million.
Yeah, that one's worse.
2 million's not changing his life. He's already got 5, right? 2 million's not going to change it that much, would it? Would you think differently? Would you invest differently? You had 2 million more.
No, and that's the weird thing about this whole thing is like, having 1 million compared to 5 million. I don't live any different. I do the same. I eat at the same places. I drive. I have a 2011 Jeep Grand Cherokee that I've had for 6 years.
Wait, you didn't buy the Tesla yet?
That's next on my list. As soon as that Cybertruck comes out, I'm getting one of those. So next year, hopefully. For the time being, I'm holding off.
So you put 200 in, and now it's worth 2.5.
I put 200 in, yes, and then I sold out of half of it when it kind of went 2.5 to 3 times, and then kept that half. So I kept 500 shares, which is now 2,500 because it was a 5-to-1 split. I bought an extra 300 shares in my Roth. I basically converted my entire Roth IRA to Tesla. Like as soon as I saw Tesla dip a little bit, I'm like, my whole entire Roth is going in Tesla. It's my one, in my opinion, it's the best long-term play I think I have. If I can go out more than 10 years. And I figure, of course you want to be as aggressive as possible in your Roth, with no RMDs and just, tax-free money. At least that's my mentality, be very aggressive within the Roth.
So were you nervous about putting 200 on one stock? It didn't make you cringe a little? You just believed in it.
No, completely nervous. Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had mutual funds my entire life up until, probably 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I started buying a little bit of Apple, buying some Amazon, Netflix, all the stuff that everybody buys. And then when I came across Tesla, I just kept watching videos. I read Elon Musk's, I don't know if it's an autobiography or a biography, but I read basically the story of his life. Just everything seemed to make sense. He didn't seem like a regular CEO. I watch CNBC every day, and you watch these guys with their suits and their perfect ties and speaking like the corporate jargon. And he didn't do any of that. And he just didn't seem like, some people call him arrogant. I see him as just the polar opposite. I don't see him as arrogant at all. Just seems like a super intelligent guy that understands what he's doing, understands like the engineering, the manufacturing. Like he's right. I don't know. There was just something about him that gave me confidence. So in my mind, it was worth the risk. And I was young enough, at the time I was 44 years old. I'm 47 now. And I'm like, you know what? I got 15 years, There was kind of a lot that went into this, but yeah, I mean, I was scared, but at the same point, I felt it was worth the risk.
So how long are you riding it now? Or are you going to start selling off little by little, or are you just going to hold it and see what happens?
I'm kind of, at this point, I'm holding it. I'm more scared to sell it than to hold it. Because I'm more scared that I'm going to really kick myself if it doubles from here and I sold out. I think the smart move, I mean, granted, I'm a financial advisor, I should know this. The smart move would be to kind of start taking some profits, right? But in my mind, I have that gambler's kind of fallacy where I feel like I'm playing with the house's money, where I've already made money in it and kind of recouped my original investments and then some. Although the house's money is, over $2 million.
Well, I know. That's what I'm thinking. It becomes a lot different when you're playing with that kind of money.
Yeah, it's so strange. Like it took me, 20 years to get to $1 million, and then 9 months to get to 5. It just makes no sense. So I'm kind of like almost shell shocked from the whole experience. So I'm trying to get my bearings, and I think eventually I will get more conservative, but I don't think anytime soon. I'm just, too young. It's IRA money too, so it's money I'm not going to touch probably for, 10 years minimum, if not longer.
Did you put your clients in Tesla too?
I did not. So I'm much more conservative with my clients' money, much more diversified with my clients' money. I think it's what's that saying about the cobbler? The cobbler has the worst shoes. I've gotten lucky.
Right.
But I take more risk with my money than I ever would with clients' money. I just didn't have the conviction to put other people into what I was doing.
Yeah. So are you married? Was your wife on board with this when you said I'm buying $200,000 of Tesla stock?
No. Well, so I'm divorced and I have, it sounds so silly at 47 saying a girlfriend, but I have a girlfriend of 6 years. I have a 13-year-old daughter. I have an 11-year-old stepdaughter. Yeah, we have separate finances, so it wasn't something we discussed. I mean, she obviously knows now because I've been bragging about it. But yeah, and she's all aboard. I mean, she kind of sees what I see, and I'm constantly just watching videos of, just people talking about Tesla from either side and the technology. I definitely not an analytical person, but I try to keep up with what's, the news on Tesla and
sure.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Let's back it up here, though, and just talk about your story a little bit, Al. Tell us about how this all started, where you grew up, what you did, your career, how you became a financial advisor. Give us your story.
Yeah. So I grew up in Long Island, New York. And at age 23, I graduated from SUNY Potsdam, which is the State University of New York, and Potsdam, which is on the Canadian border. Old place in the tundra up there in upstate New York. And I came back down. I lived with my parents for, I don't know, I think it was like 9 months. And they sprung it upon me that we're selling the house and we're moving to Florida and we're moving to a retirement community. So obviously you can't come with us. So I was kind of kicked out of the nest at, 22 and a half, 23. And really like all of this started out of like fear and almost desperation of not being able to provide for myself. So I took a commission-only job with New York Life Insurance Company, 4 years of selling life insurance as a 23-year-old, not an easy thing to do. Didn't make much money. Worked in Manhattan for a few years, selling health insurance, knocking on doors, just lots of cold calling and just going from like office building to office building in Manhattan. And just, very demoralizing kind of work. It was terrible. I mean, I learned a lot. If I had to do it over again, I don't think I'd choose to go through that, but definitely learned a lot through the experience. And then just slowly kind of like worked up the ranks, basically went into, JP Morgan Chase, worked there for a while, worked at Wells Fargo for a while, worked at a few other places, and then kind of landed just a sweet deal at Wells Fargo where I worked in a 401k division. It was kind of like you were working just with retirement assets and you were working with rolling people's money over in their 401ks to an IRA that I would manage, and that would be commissionable. Fast forward, I moved to Charlotte. I wound up moving all of those clients from Wells independent, and I've had that business for the last 8 years. So that's been kind of like my working career in a nutshell.
Did you start that business from scratch then?
Complete scratch. I mean, yeah. Yeah, scratch is definitely an understatement. I mean, there was nothing. I mean, just complete cold calling and just, again, it was fear and desperation. I think I was so young that I didn't know better. And so I just kept pushing forward. It was one of those things where like, I really didn't like nobody likes cold calling. I mean, I never met anybody that likes cold calling, but I just continued to do it, and just continued to kind of like believe the dream. And it just morphed. Over time, it morphed. I stuck with it long enough that it paid off. It just paid off over time. I didn't know where it was going for most of the time, but those first 10 years really set the stage for like the last 15. So I'm glad I did it.
Alrighty, let's just take a quick break from the interview and thank JustWorks for sponsoring today's episode. Are you a small business owner and looking for an easier way to onboard and manage remote employees? Are you doing it all at your company? Well, JustWorks makes it easier for you to start, run, and grow a business. Let me tell you how JustWorks can help your business. It can relieve you of some of the administrative work you don't love. The things like running payroll, managing benefits, and figuring out state-by-state rules and regulations if your business spans many states. JustWorks is the ultimate HR platform for small and growing businesses with simple software and expert support for benefits, payroll, HR, and compliance. JustWorks makes it simple to hire and manage remote employees across all 50 states. Across the country, small businesses with big dreams love JustWorks for its simplicity, intuitive platform, and time-saving features. Whether your team is remote or in person, you can give them access to national large group health insurance plans and manage onboarding, payroll, PTO, and compliance all in one place. Sure, you can do it all, but why do it alone? Learn how JustWorks can help today. Find out how they can help your business by going to justworks.com. Again, that's justworks.com for more info. So thanks to JustWorks for supporting today's show, and let's return to the episode with Al.
I'm curious, Al, as you've gone on this journey, you've ridden this wave this last year with Tesla and just the market in general. Where do you go from here? And is there a target net worth you're shooting towards down the road?
I'm like past where I thought I would be at 60. So, at 60 years old, in my smaller minds, to me, like at 60, if I had $3 million in retirement accounts, some cash, I figured, I don't live an extravagant lifestyle, living off 120 grand a year was fine. That's what I live off now. And I live well. I would travel. I do fun things. I just don't really have, many expensive hobbies. So I'm kind of past where I thought I would be, but I'm 13 years early, so I'm really spending some time now just kind of evaluating where do I want to go with this? Because I didn't have these aspirations of being, a deca millionaire or, having these extravagant kind of things. So now that I'm there, I'm kind of trying to figure out, do I just keep pushing the envelope? Do I keep, the risk on, which I feel like I'm very risk on right now? Do I pull back? Do I go to a 60-40 split, stock to bond split, a conservative kind of, or whatever, moderate portfolio, just ride out that 4% rule? At this point, I feel like I'm too young to retire, so I'm okay with the risk on for a little while longer. I guess my stretch goal, if I had like a dream goal, I would love to have $10 million. Like $10 million to be like a deca millionaire sounds cool to me. I don't think I'd live any different. I don't think it'd change my life in any way, but in just some weird way, it just sounds cool to me.
Interesting. So how do you plan to get there at this point? Do you employ the current strategy you're on? Do you add real estate? Do you continue to try to pick a couple stock winners, or what do you do to get there?
Well, I've listened to some of your podcasts with the real estate people that you've had on. I'm like, man, that sounds complicated. So I don't think I'll do the real estate thing. I think I'll continue doing what I'm doing. My income has been high, over $200,000 a year for the last 10 and should stay there, for as long as I decide to stay in the business. So I'm pretty content with just kind of doing what I'm doing. I feel like it's been working pretty well. I get a lot of my time, which is important to me. So like, of course, time is like the commodity we all want. So I have time to, play music, to do the podcast, to, go hiking, take trips and travel. So I feel like I live a pretty good lifestyle now. I get to enjoy my kids. I get to do fun stuff. I don't know if I need to change it up, I don't feel a need at this point to start discovering different business opportunities or, maybe down the road. I don't know. In my mind space right now, things are going well. I feel comfortable. I like the way things are going.
Yeah. Anything out there besides that Cybertruck that you want to purchase down the road or want to experience down the road?
Yeah. I always wanted a lake house. So I got caught back in, this is kind of a familiar story. Back in 2007, bought a beach house that I was going to, put on VRBO and use it for myself. And hopefully, with the rents from VRBO would pay for itself. Of course, 2008, 2009 happens. Had to wind up short selling that beach house. So I do have a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth just from real estate, but I always wanted a lake house. So that would definitely be something down the road I would love to have. But between that and the Cybertruck, no, nothing else is really expensive. Like everything else is like maybe like camping equipment, gear, that kind of stuff, outdoor gear. I play drums, but I have, a few drum sets already. Yeah, there's really nothing out there. I like to travel too, but I've been traveling. And I'm not the 5-star hotel guy. I'd rather just, do it simple. And yeah, it's kind of strange. It's weird being in this position. I didn't think I'd be in this position. And now that I'm there, I don't I'm very conscious of having that lifestyle creep. So very cautious about, starting to inflate the lifestyle.
Yeah, totally. So, Al, as you've gone on this journey, you've been a financial advisor, you've ridden the waves of the market, individual stocks. What advice would you give to somebody who's just starting out or just trying to get rolling with their life, their portfolio, their investments?
Man, I mean, I don't want to sound, like what everybody else says, but I mean, it's just the consistency of it. If you put everything on autopilot, you can't think about this stuff. Like, it has to be done automatic. Everything's got to be auto debit, whether it's your 401k. I mean, everything could be on. It's so easy to set up too. And you could do it within 5 minutes, right? You could log into your bank account, do a transfer of $200 a month from your checking to your savings whenever you get paid. Just little like automated things that you can do ongoing and just set it and forget it. Like that Ron Popeil commercial, just set the thing up and just don't think about it. Just forget about it and just move on, do something else with your life. But all of those automated things helped a lot. From an investing standpoint, I honestly don't have advice. I'm a financial advisor. I don't have advice as far as picking stocks or anything like that. One thing I wanted to bring up was the index fund investing, like that whole wave that's happened with the FIRE movement. That's been really interesting to me because working in the industry between 2000 and 2010, I mean, you couldn't persuade people to be an index fund investor at that point. They wouldn't have made, that was they consider like the dead decade or, so from 2000 to 2010, if you were in the S&P 500, you wouldn't have made any money. So it's hard to sell something, to tell somebody to invest in the S&P when it's not producing anything. And the funny thing about it is that if you actually did invest during that 10 years, it probably was the best 10 years to invest because you would have reaped the benefits of the last 10. So investing is a strange thing. I mean, when everybody starts harping on the index fund investing and the low cost, I get it. But at the same points, I mean, what I've done with Tesla, yes, I got lucky, but I feel like I jumped so many years just by taking a chance. I'm not telling people to take chances like I do. I'm just saying that, just be open to other ideas, index fund investing. I don't know if it's, all it's cracked up to be. That's just my opinion.
It'll get you there. It'll get you there, no doubt, right? You're just saying you're willing to take a little bit more risk along the way. See if you can get there faster.
It'll eventually get you there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the main point with the index fund investing is that people aren't getting the psychology of investing before they're getting the strategy. So it's like the cart before the horse. They're not realizing that when their S&P 500 fund goes down 30% in a crazy year like we just had, are they going to have a knee-jerk reaction and sell at the bottom? Because being in the industry, I would tell you 90% of people left to their own devices would sell. At some point, it hurts too much. They don't want to lose any more money. In the thick of it, they'll pull the trigger and they'll decide to sell. And to give them strategies of how to invest before getting the mental fortitude or the psychology, it's like that cart before the horse syndrome. Like it's okay. What's the use of having all these strategies if you're not going to stick with the plan? So that's my kind of.
No, it's interesting. Thanks for sharing. Let me just jump back to what you and Jace were talking about, then I'll keep going with this conversation. But do you ever think like, hey, I should just hang it up? Like sell this Tesla stock, buy the lake house and just hang it up and stop working and do what you want to do at $5 million?
Kinda. Yeah, I do. I think about it every day, to be honest, Clark. I mean, so I feel like I'm too early to the party, honestly. Like I feel like I'm 47. I got kids that are, in school. Like I have to kind of live off their schedule at this point. If I was 10 years older, absolutely. I think I would pull the trigger. But I just feel like at this point, they're in school. I'm kind of in their routine. Money, income is good with the business. I almost think it's just kind of too early. I wouldn't have the freedom of time to travel extensively it's a little bit convoluted because I'm divorced and my girlfriend is divorced. So we are also sharing custody with both kids. So we kind of have to stay in the same location too. So we couldn't just move to a lake house. So some things that are just.
So my thesis isn't as appealing. Is what you're saying.
It's definitely appealing. I think it's
all right. It was fun to ask. I was just kind of curious. I had to ask. So let's talk about the financial planning industry. You're a financial advisor, so why does it get a bad rap, and what's your take there?
Okay, so financial advisors will not like this, and you probably heard this before, but the financial planning industry or the financial advisory industry, it's an asset gathering industry. Nobody wants to hear that, but that's essentially what it is. The largest financial planners, or like the financial advisors and financial planners that make the most money, are the ones that can accumulate the most assets, right? Have the most assets under management. So essentially their entire job, 90% of what they're trying to do is just bring in more assets. And I think the smoke and mirrors part of this is that they're trying to say that, well, no, we manage your money. We're allocating you properly. We're doing estate planning. We're doing tax loss harvesting. We're doing like all these different things that sound kind of, very advanced. But really what they're doing is they have, maybe 5 or 10 portfolios that they would use that are pre-selected. They didn't put these portfolios together. Just think of it this way. They'll have like a conservative portfolio, a moderate portfolio, and an aggressive portfolio. And I know financial advisors that just have 3 that they use. And you're going to go into one of those as a new client. So there's no choice in investments. They're not putting portfolios together each time they get a new client. All they're doing is prospecting for new money to bring in to plunk in one of these investment portfolios, which they'll then get paid a fee on. So I think that's 80 to 90% of what advisors do, because that's how they survive, that they have to bring in new money to make more money. I'm not saying financial advisors are bad. I'm not saying that they don't do well by their clients, that they're not giving good advice, that kind of thing. I think they are. But I think if you pull kind of the curtain back and you want to see what they're really doing, they're not looking at spreadsheets. They're not reviewing your account on a weekly basis. They're bringing in new money. That's essentially what they're doing. So there you go.
So who should use one then?
I think people that want nothing to do with it. I think that people that want nothing to do with finance, they're like, listen, I'm in my work. I'm a doctor. I'm whatever. I'm in a different profession. I want to concentrate my efforts in that and on my family. And I honestly just don't want to think about finance. I think those are the people that should use financial advisors. It really isn't for people that, feel confident in managing their own money. Why would you hire someone?
Right.
There's so much advice that you can get out there for free. So I think, it's catered to the people that don't want to be bothered with that. Just as if, like I'm going to hire out somebody to cut my lawn, or I don't want to cut my lawn. I want to hire somebody else to do it. Yes, I can do it and save money, but I don't want to spend my time doing that.
You don't want to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not speaking so well about my industry here, but
no, I appreciate you being blunt and direct. It's nice. Yeah. And I agree with you. I think there's people that, and look, I think the other advantage is sometimes it's nice to have somebody look over something.
Yes.
Right? I think sometimes just to have a second opinion, or I think that can be valuable too. And there's other stuff mixed in there. I mean, maybe that's not a financial planner, maybe it goes somewhere else, but you have estate planning, you have will. There's certain things that you certainly want a professional to help you with, I would think, especially if your assets get to a certain level.
Yeah, like new perspective, like a new set of eyes, someone unbiased that's not emotionally involved with your money. I think that's important, definitely.
Yeah. So along with this money, Al, and the growing net worth here, has the growth in net worth caused an increase in happiness at all? Is it at all correlated?
Oh man, I wish I could tell you yes, but I'd be lying. No, it's more stressful, to be honest. I feel a little bit more stressed now. I mean, I don't know if it has to do with, the pandemic and just being kind of in quarantine, and we're kind of just itching to get out and do stuff. Maybe a little bit of that, but I think for me, it might be part of my personality, since I didn't have these big aspirations of having a big net worth or anything like that. It feels, and again, half the net worth being in Tesla stock, it's stress. Yeah, it feels a little bit stressful, to be honest. And I feel like that's the goal for me for 2021, is to figure out how to kind of tone back these stress levels where it's just not necessary. I'm looking at the markets every day. You're supposed to be happy when you have $5 million, right?
Yeah, you're just stressed because you got $2.5 million in Tesla and you know it's going to drop 50% and you don't know when it's going to happen.
Exactly, right? I'm waiting for like the anvil to like fall on my head. Exactly.
So I'm curious along that line, as the net worth has grown, is how you've allocated your time changed? Meaning you were grinding early on in your career, going door to door doing sales. Now you're not working as much. When did that shift start to happen? Was it at a certain point or was it just gradually throughout your life and career?
Yeah, the shift happened when I went independent. So I went independent 8 years ago and brought clients from one institution to another. And from that point, it kind of went on autopilot. So for the last 8 years, I wouldn't say part-time, but definitely less than full-time, I've been working. So I've had a lot of time on my hands, but you know how your mind works. You produce new problems. So, I spent so many years with the problem of not having enough money. And then finally you have enough money, your mind starts creating new problems, right?
Right.
Or life just throws you new problems. If a relative gets sick or something comes up. So yeah, you just
find stuff to fill the time, right?
You do. And you try to be productive, and you try to not be in your own head too much and create problems out of thin air. But, it kind of, your mind tends to do that if you're not occupied. So I've started to realize that, you need to be involved in stuff. You can't just have leisure time. You can't have your mind being empty and just thinking you're just going to vacation and, you have all these fantasies when you're younger. You're in your 20s. At least I did. Maybe you guys can relate. That, I always thought like if I was rich, I would live like a rock star because I grew up in the 80s and all the hair bands like were partying all the time and drinking and having fun. They were living like rock stars. I'm like, wow, that'd be amazing. If I had a lot of money, I'd live like a rock star. And then you turn 47 years old and you realize the fantasies of when you were in your 20s are not the same as when you're 47, like things start to change and you're like, wait, I'm holding on to these same fantasies from when I was a kid. You know what I mean? So I don't have the same aspirations. I'm like, you start to have to retool your trajectory, like where you want to go. So I'm in the process of kind of doing that.
Trying to figure it out a little bit. Yeah. Let me just ask you some rapid fire questions here and then we'll close it up. How old were you when you became a millionaire?
I was, let's say 45. It's only 2 years ago.
45, and then the second, third, fourth, and fifth million came 2 years after.
Yeah, I know. It sounds insane. Yeah.
What about household spending? How much do you spend annually?
I actually did this. I actually went through my credit card bill. So I throw everything on one credit card and pay it off monthly. After tax, I'm spending about $80,000 a year. So whatever that is pre-tax, like maybe 120 pre-tax. But yeah, $80,000 a year. And that's with travel and everything.
And as much as you're comfortable sharing, what's been your range of annual income since you started working?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I talk about money all the time with clients, and yeah, 200,000 to 250 has been the range approximately. Some years a little bit more, but yeah, basically 200 to 250 probably over the last 8 years.
And what'd you start at in New York selling life insurance? Like 50 or something, 40?
Oh my God. Wow.
30?
Only, man, I couldn't even tell you my worst year there. I mean, terrible. Maybe 25? Like 25, but grinding it. Like basically just working ridiculous hours, weekends. I think my best year in the first 4 was 45,000.
So let's just wrap it up here, Al. I mean, I appreciate you being so candid and open with us. And just in closing, any mistakes that you've made or any last words of advice that you'd give?
I hate to be, I don't want to sound pretentious. Like I don't have any regrets. I'm sure I've made some mistakes. I don't really think about them. Like I've kind of, I guess the beach, from a financial standpoint, getting a beach house in 2007 was not a good idea. Maybe a year from now when Tesla gets future mistakes pending. I don't know. I mean, I guess the opinion I have for people that are starting out, everybody always tells you to follow your passion. There's always like these memes, like follow your passion, do what you love, and the money will follow, that kind of thing. I did it the polar opposite. Like I did stuff that I didn't like to do for a long time, and it paid off over time, but it sucked for a long time. So when somebody comes to me,
was it worth it? Was it worth it to do that? I mean, easy to say yes because you have 5 million, but do you wish you would have spent more time doing what you enjoyed more?
I don't really think that way. I kind of think I'm just working life in reverse. I feel like now I'm doing my passions in the second half of life. Instead of starting with my passion and the money following, I feel like I chased money and then now I get to do some of my passions. So I'm glad I'm at where I'm at. If I had to do it over again, yeah, maybe I would have done it different. So again, when like younger people come to me for advice, like a nephew of mine sometimes kind of hits me up for, what do you think I should do with this? I'm like, listen, this is coming from someone that did what he didn't want to do for 10 straight years. Like I hated what I was doing for a long time. It eventually paid off. So I don't know if I'm the best person to ask for that type of advice. It definitely doesn't sound romantic.
No, it's interesting. I appreciate you sharing. I mean, I think it's everybody's opinion and advice is different. So it's fun to hear. So just a last question here. I know you mentioned you have a podcast. What is it? Where can people find you or connect with you if they want to?
Yeah. Well, thanks for mentioning. Yeah. It's called the unlearningproject.org. Well, that's the website, unlearningproject.org. You could look it up under Unlearning Project. It's on all the major podcast platforms. I kind of just summarize it that just because I'm an introspective person, try to do this idea of coming from a place of like self-judgment to just self-curiosity. It may sound a little hokey, but just that, we're so hard on ourselves in so many different ways, and just learning over the years that just kind of being curious about things, being open to index fund investing, being open to individual stock investing, like just be open to many different things and see what works for you. I think it's just kind of having that open mind. And, if you don't have that, it's just you get closed off into these like rigid kind of thought patterns, which I don't think are beneficial for anyone. So anyway, that's what the Unlearning Project is about. So it's awesome. A blog and it's a podcast.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing and thanks for coming on, Al. You're taking enough of your time. So again, everybody, that's Al, net worth of $5 million, 2.5, and Tesla stock bought at 200. So congrats on your success and thanks for joining us.
Clark, Jace, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I love your podcast.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Clark Sheffield and Jace Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website at millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.